Good morning. Hope everybody had a good weekend, and I hope everybody's ready for what looks to be a cold week. Um, Today, I want to spend a lot of time going over the first paper and just kind of giving you what the assignment is, an overview of how I kind of look at writing, and to kind of walk through step by step some of the things that you need to do to kind of be successful on writing a paper where we're analyzing characters or we're analyzing potential themes. Basic instructions include write a well-developed 3 to 4 page essay that responds to one of the following prompts, and you'll get those prompts in the next 3 slides. Paper is an analysis, not a research paper. All the work should be the student's individual analysis. I don't want to read what somebody else said. I don't want to uh, have you doing a bunch of research. It's take a look at the plays, think about what we talked about in class. As we're going through class, think about the papers. If you want to ask questions that will help you write the paper better during class, please do that. But this is your work. This is the student's analysis. I don't care what other people said. I want to see what you think, and I want to take a quick look at how you think. It's due in the Google Drive folder February 24th, 2021, 11:59 p.m. And no, I will not be awake at 11:59 double checking, but I do want to start correcting the next morning. Prompt one. Shakespeare, I think, uses the wife whore, wife harlot dichotomy in Julius Caesar. I think Portia makes that statement pretty clearly. Um, Generally, there is some just basic views of how women are treated in that play that I think we should take a look at. And in Othello, we're going to see Iago making statements about women and drawing distinctions between the wife and the hooker throughout the play. So it seems to me to be a dichotomy, and I think it's a dichotomy that plays into some of the theme for each of the dramas. So, explain how he uses it and try to perhaps find a common theme that the two dramas share and talk about how that dichotomy, in at least a small way, helps develop the theme. Once again, if you have questions, please feel free to ask me in class. This one's a little bit longer, and as you're taking a look at this one, um, I have a quote from Arthur Miller about what tragedy is. And the prompts will also be up on D2L. But the idea, and we'll start about the third line, the flaw or crack in the characters is really nothing and need be nothing, but is inherent unwillingness to remain passive in the face of what he conceives to be a challenge to his dignity, his image of his rightful status. So if you jump down to the prompt itself, select a protagonist from Julius Caesar or Othello, and I think we have perhaps, you know, could be Brutus, you perhaps could take Caesar, certainly Othello, and explain how the character's inherent unwillingness to remain passive in the face of what he conceives to be a challenge to his dignity proves central to the work as a whole. And again, take a look at this key word is how. I'm going to talk about this as we go through the presentation, but remember that the main point here is not who and what. The main point of an analysis essay is how and why. And prompt three, Iago and Cassius are infamous because they deceive others. Yet many characters in Julius Caesar and Othello, and I should have italicized both of those, deceive themselves. Pick the character who deceives him or herself the most and explain how that deceit helps develop the drama's theme. So you're going to pick one character from Julius Caesar or one character from Othello, explain how they are deceiving themselves, and explain how that leads us to the drama's theme. For all three of these prompts, I think you need to work backwards. It talks about the effect on the work as a whole. So what is the key part of a work as a whole? It talks about the drama's theme. What is the theme? And then work backwards to how does that get developed through deceit, or how does that get developed through the dichotomy, or how does that get developed through the inherent unwillingness to remain passive. I spent a lot of years as a debate coach, and my life revolved around claim, data, warrant. And I think an analysis essay is basically the same sort of thing: claim, data, warrant. All right. And I'm going to go through step by step talking about paragraphs in a paper and how that basically ties to this claim, data, warrant thing, with the additional qualifiers that I'll talk about very, very briefly. I think you always start with evidence supplied by, and I have the research here. The research for this paper is, what are the lines in the play that best, what do you get from the lines in the play, and how do those lines in the play best support the thesis that you're developing? So you're going to create your claim based on that, and you're going to develop a warrant to link the claim to the evidence. Here's a really bad but serviceable thing, and I'm sorry, when I copied and pasted this slide from another presentation, I covered things up. The research is going to tell me that whole bathtubs are slippery. The claim I want to make is, don't dance while showering in a hotel bathtub. And the warrant is, you don't want strangers to see you lying naked on the floor and crying. I think that that is basically all you really need to do here as you're running through this paper. You are going to pull together some quotations. You're going to pull together some actions on the play. That's going to be your research. That's going to lead you to your claim. And then you're going to explain how those lines tie to the claim. Warrants provide a connection between the claim and the reasons and the evidence. They explain, how exactly do I get from the data to the claim? It might allow the readers to determine unstated assumptions. For example, my assumptions in the previous slide are going to be that everybody lacks grace just like I do, that everybody fears breaking his or her hip just like I do, that everybody doesn't want to be discovered by a hotel maid crying. They may also require backing with a little bit of evidence. I think for the most part for this paper, you're not going to have to do any backing with evidence. If you explain exactly how the quotation gets to the claim, you should be in good shape. The warrants should provide original thought about the quotation, concrete detail, the data. They should avoid stating the obvious. And you should probably try to be telling the reader something that they may not have figured out. I think warrants provide the clarity that in the presentation last Wednesday, the speaker talked about. The purpose of warrants is to provide the clarity, to explain exactly how these two things tie together, why these two things are important. As you're writing the warrants in a rough draft and in your pre-writing, I think you could begin with the phrases. This shows that. This also shows. This reveals. This implies. But in your final draft, you should work to remove all those phrases. So yes, I'm asking that you spend some time doing an initial draft, and then I'm asking that you spend some time doing some revising and editing. I'll probably talk a little bit about the difference between revising and editing in another class period before the paper's due. For example, editing on this slide would be getting rid of that little underline mark that shouldn't be there. Avoid using data as a warrant. Data, the quotation should never speak for itself. Do not assume that everybody's going to draw the same conclusion about this quotation as you have. Explain what the quotation means. The warrant is the explanation. Make sure that the warrants, again, tie to the claim. Just because you've explained what a quotation means doesn't mean that you've tied it to your claim. Make sure they relate. Make sure that you don't contradict the claim. And make sure you don't repeat yourself. So, for example, from my previous one, dancing in a hotel bathroom is unsafe. Dancing in the hotel bathtub is dangerous. If it's unsafe, it's dangerous. All right? That seems to be a repeat. Dancing in hotel bathrooms is risky. I've got my unsafe and dangerous. And now I've got my reasons why that might happen. That basically will be my thesis, and then we're going to develop my paper and the topic sentences that work as claims from that paper. And avoid being generic. Unsafe is pretty generic. Broken bones, lifelong embarrassment. I think I'll work there. All right. And I'm not sure why bodily is still in there. Once again, always proofread. Qualifiers, I mentioned those earlier. Please remember that you've got words like few, possibly, arguably, perhaps. Don't overpromise. Don't overstate. Make sure that you work to avoid, overgeneralizing, dealing in stereotypes. Work to provide the limits that make your paper, believable, that make your paper solid. Don't overpromise. Don't overgeneralize. Don't stereotype. Sometimes you're going to need words like few or possibly, as opposed to never and always. You're going to need a qualifier like perhaps. In a paper, I believe that the paragraph should be the building block. I'm going to be pretty agnostic about your intro. If you want to have the intro that the funnel that leads people to your thesis, that's fine. If you want to begin with the thesis, that's fine with me too. I'm pretty agnostic there. But I believe that the body paragraph should be the building block of the paper. It should be a group of sentences that supports the single idea, which is the paper's thesis. It should be related to the thesis. It should be unified around a single idea. And everything should fit together within it. All right. A paragraph should cover one point. I think that helps, again, provide clarity. I'm not doing that as a rule because I like rules. I think, as the speaker said on Wednesday, it's clarity. And then just kind of as a quick overview, you've got claim, data, warrant. Sometimes you're going to have to keep doubling up on the warrant. Sometimes you should add extra data to back everything up and add some more warrants after that. So claim, data, warrant, data, warrant. It looks really complicated, but basically you're working to prove a point. You've got this claim, you've got some quotations, you explain the quotations, or you explain the character's actions. If you, instead of quotation, you just talk about what the character does, and then you develop how and why that matters, how and why that ties to the thesis, how and why that ties to the point you're trying to make. And sometimes you do 2 or 3 pieces of data within the thing. But again, remember, the quotations and the actions don't speak for themselves. You have to explain how and why they tie. All right. I don't have a daily writing prompt here. I think that for the most part, I'm probably going to have you guys take the day off on the daily writing. So those of you watching, I hope you have, once again, had a good weekend, have a good week, and stay warm. And hopefully see you in class on Wednesday.